Hello and welcome to the 8th section of our full CSS course. In this video, we're going to talk about transition and transformations. If I want to quickly show you the transition and transformation, I want you to focus on this button that we have right here. Whenever I hover my mouse over the button, its background changes to red. So hover, background changes to red. So transition is all about animating the change that is happening to an element. So in this example, if I hover now, you can see the background changes smoothly. There's no jump there. And if I animate the text color as well, you can see both background and text color change smoothly. Beautiful. And the transformation is actually transforming one of the aspects of an element. As an example, this button, whenever I hover over it, it gets bigger. You can see the background and the text color change also. So transformation is about changing one of the aspects about the element, like rotation, scale, or positioning. And if I enable the transition here as well with the transformation, now you can see there's a smooth scale up and background and text change. So in this video, we're going to learn about these properties. All right, so as always, I'm starting with an empty HTML file, and I have the style.css here that is empty, and I have reference.css file inside my HTML. I'm going to move the style.css to the side and collapse the sidebar. This way we can see both the HTML and CSS at the same time. Let's go ahead and create a button element inside the HTML file, and let's say Reza coding here. I'm running this HTML file with the live server here, and I have the preview like this in the browser. All right, inside the CSS, I'm gonna select the button and add the background color of light blue. And in order to see the transition, we should provide a change to the button. I'm gonna add some styles for the hover pseudo class and changing the background color to light coral. Now, let's also change the color from red to blue. So inside the preview, we have this one, and whenever I hover over it, it turns to this. Both text color and background color change. Nice. So the first property that we have for transition is called transition property. It specifies the name of the property to which the transition is applied. That means that, okay, both background and color change, but which one you want to animate. So in this case, I'm going to be animating the background color. The second property is called transition duration. It says that how long would the animation last. For example, we can say 1s for 1 second, or we can say 1000 ms or milliseconds, which basically is 1 second. This is about the timing of the transition. And then we also have transition timing function that basically says that how do you want the animation to happen. We have a linear, which changes linearly. We're going to inspect this in the browser shortly. And we also have an optional property called transition delay that we can set it to 0 seconds, which basically shows the delay for the transition to happen. So now if we go to the browser, if I hover my mouse over the button, you can see it takes 1 second only for the background to change. So the text color changes quickly, but the background color change takes 1 second. So let's go ahead and select this button here and play with the transition inside the DevTools. Let me zoom in a little bit. So here you can see we have the property for the background color. I can change it to color to apply the transition to the text color. So you can see the background quickly jumps and changes, but the text color is animating. We also can select multi-properties here as well. So we can say color and also background color. So this way we can do the animation for both properties. You can see it changes this way smoothly. Let's go ahead and reduce the animation timing or duration to 100 milliseconds or 0.1 second and this way it changes quickly. We can also change this property to all. This means all changes. So every change that is happening to the button will be animating. So here we have the timing function as well. In the browser, if we click on this icon here you can see the different timing functions that we have for the transition. So we have the linear, which basically says that the speed is the same at any point. So it starts linearly. And then we have ease in and ease out. Basically starts slowly, speeds up quickly in the middle, and at the end slows down again. So here we can also change the timing function and copy this value to our CSS. And you can see the preview here. You can see it starts and then quickly changes the speed. We have ease in as well. Basically says easy at the beginning and then gets faster as it moves forward. And then we have ease out. Basically starts really quick and then slows down as it moves forward. And then we have the delay. As an example, if I increase the delay, you can see I can change these values with scroll. So if I scroll up, it increases the value to 1 second. Now, if I hover my mouse over the button, for 1 second, nothing happens. And after 1 second, it starts animating and shows the transition. And the last thing about the transition is that instead of providing all these 4 values for the transition, we usually use the shorthand version. Is we only say transition like this. And then first, we select the property. We say all. Then we provide the duration. We say, for example, 1 second, and then we provide the timing function, let's say linear. And optionally, at the end, we can provide the delay. If we don't provide it, it means that there's no delay. Let me just remove all these transition properties, and we can only keep this one. So transition, all, 1 second, linear. So in the preview, you can see we have 1 second transition for this button. Beautiful. So right now we're providing the change only for the hover, but in real world we can add the changes from JavaScript, from functionality, and from anywhere. We are doing the hover here because we can add changes with CSS with the hover. We can change hover to focus pseudo class. If I hit the tab right now, you can see it focuses the button and transition happens. Not only the background color or color, we can change the border style, positioning styles, and anything. Let's quickly showcase the margin, for example. I can say 20 pixels of margin. Here you can see there's a space around the button, but whenever I hover over the button, I want to remove the margin, so no margins. So now if I hover over it, you can see it moves. All right, so this is all about the transition. You can read about everything that we talked about inside the reference website. We talked about exactly all these stuff that we have here. We talked about the shorthand as well. And that's it. There's nothing more about the transition. We can quickly jump and talk about the transformations. All right, so we have the transform here as well. In CSS, we have a couple of transformation functions that we can use them to transform an element. One of them is called translate, which basically displaces an element. We have translate for both X and Y. We have translate X only for the X-axis and translate Y for the Y-axis. We have rotate that rotates an element, and then we have the scale for scaling an element. We also have scale X and scale Y. Lastly, we have skew, which gets 2 angles for X and Y. This basically tilts an element. We also have skew X and skew Y. All right, so let's use them inside our code and actually see that how we can play with them. So at the bottom of this transition, I'm gonna say transform. And here we can use these transform functions. And you can see inside the web, we have other CSS transform functions as well. The 4 transform values that we have inside our reference website are the most commonly used transformation functions that we have inside web. All right, so let's go ahead and use the translate, and let's say 10 pixels, So we can change it from here to basically, you can scroll up and down to change the value. So you can see whenever I change that, it moves. And the reason it moves slowly is because this transition. Right now we have the transition property all. So deselect the transition, and now you can see I can move it around. Right now we have the translate for X, and I can add 10 pixels for the Y as well. So now you can see it moves up and down and left and right. Beautiful. So we have translate. So let's say I want to add another transform. So I should select this, add a space, for example, scale 1.5. So if I select this, I can actually increase or reduce its value with the scroll. You can see it changes. Now, if we get back to transition into the game, now if I change the value, you can see it animates the change. Beautiful. So the next one was rotate. So add a space here and add the rotate. For example, 45 degrees. You can see browser nicely shows it like this clock thing. Temporarily deselect this transition value and change it here to see how it works. Beautiful. Note that the scale is a fraction of its scale. For example, 1.5 means 50% more, and 1 itself is its actual scale. And for the rotate, we can use degrees, 44 degrees, or we can say 1 turn, like this. So here you can see the turn. We can change it, and it shows the turn. So 0 turn and 1 turn. Beautiful. We also have skew, and it accepts 2 degrees. You can see right now it seems like a tilted thing. So if I change it here, you can see how this X skew works, and the second one is for Y skew. So it kind of tilts the element. Now, one thing to know is that in newer CSS, we don't have to write this transform, and we can directly use the translate, scale, or rotate. So if I reload this and all the DevTools styles are gone now, and if we jump back to the code, instead of providing translate X like this with the transform, we can actually use it like translate, like this, and provide 10 pixels and 10 pixels. We can do the same for scale as well. We can say scale 1.5. So in the DevTools, if we go to the preview right now, you can see we can change it here as well. So note that this will work only in newer browsers and newer CSS versions. But it's good to know about the old ways as well, because you might see that in the code. So we can provide the transform and add all in one line, or we can separately add the translate, the scale, the rotate, for example, 20 degrees. But note that we cannot do it for skew. We don't have a property for skew for now. But it might be there in future, but right now, 2026, we don't have that. Cool. So now we know about the CSS transition and transformation. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is transform origin. So right now, if I go back to the preview, so if I deselect the transition and if I change the degree for rotation, and you can see the button rotates based on its center. So its center is always has one position. Transform basis basically says that we can change the base of the transform so that whenever we rotate it, it will rotate from that origin or that base. And the values that we have for that is like center and center, which provides you the Y and X axis. And we can also use the keywords like top, bottom, left, right, and center. Now, there's a video in our YouTube channel for the clock project with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And if I open the DevTools here and select one of these clock needles, you can see the way it moves is actually using this transform. We are actually rotating it like this. So each second, we just update the rotation. But it rotates from its start, from this position, not from the center. And the reason for that is because we have a property called transition origin. And right now it's at bottom. Now that the clock is stopped, here you can see it has bottom. If I change it to top, Now you can see the top section is here and it rotates based on the top of the needle. So if you're interested about the transform origin, you can read more about them here inside our reference website. The next thing that we're going to talk about is actually a cool project. I'm 100% sure you've seen something like this in your phone or in your browser. This is called toggle, kind of like an on and off thing. And we can actually build this using only HTML and CSS. So I'm not going to spend the time here to code this, but I highly recommend you actually go through the code that we have here and type it line by line yourself. This will help you to understand this. But I'm going to quickly show you a hint about how this works. And if you actually scroll down and go to the HTML section of this, that toggle is actually a checkbox input. But with the help of CSS, we can reset its look and actually turn it into something like a toggle. And inside the CSS, if I scroll up, just note that we have a pseudo class called checked that actually adds the styles only for the checked checkbox. So that's the reason we can style it like this green background. So when it's checked, the background is green, and we can move this thumb here to the right so we can transform it. And whenever it's not checked, the transform for this thumb is at the left side and the background for this entire thing is gray. And there's a transition for the both thumb and the background color that we have here. So right now it's very clear that how it works. Just note that usually in real world, we don't do such thing. We use JavaScript for that. But it's a very cool way to practice the transition and the transform. Alright, so the last topic that we're going to talk about in this video is actually about CSS animations. So far, we had the animation only on transition, but we can actually add animations to any element at any time without the transition. And animation is not about transformation. Animation can be about any CSS properties. Alright, so the way that we can add the CSS animations to our elements is using this keyword called keyframe. And the animations in CSS, a very unique syntax. And we're going to use this keyframes for that. So let's jump back to the code and see how we can add the animations to our code. I'm going to remove everything that we have here. In order to add the CSS animation, first we have to declare the animation. And later we can apply the animation to any element. So to do that, we're going to use this keyframe syntax. And inside the VS Code, if you select this keyframe identifier, it will automatically create this syntax for you. First, we have to rename our CSS animation. We have to add a name for that. So here it says identifier. I'm going to say rotator. So this is a CSS animation for rotation. And then here we can add different properties based on different points of our animation. For example, I can say from and add a different CSS property here and add a to. So this is going to be the start of animation and this is going to be the end of animation. So here I'm going to say rotate 0 turn and duplicate it down to make it 3 turns. There's an animation that whenever we run this animation, it will rotate an element 3 times. So now let's go ahead and add this to the button. The way that we can add the keyframe is actually a bit complex, but we're going to use the VS Code to make our life simpler. So for animation, we have multiple properties like animation, duration, animation, timing function, something similar to transition, but we're going to use the shorthand. I want you to just type anim, and you can see in VS Code, the first option is animation snippet. If I hit enter, you can see it asks for a couple of properties inside animation. First, it says the name. So we're going to use the same name for the animation that we defined here. So I'm going to say, okay, use this animation. I'm going to call it rotator. And if I hit tab, it will jump to the next property. It says the duration. So for duration, I'm going to say 100 milliseconds. Then we have timing function. Hit tab, jumps to the timing function, and I'm going to say linear. So you can see it also provides us this nice IntelliSense. Hit another tab, delay, let's set it to 0 seconds. Hit tab again, jumps to the iteration count. So how many times you want the animation to run? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I'm gonna say 1. Then we have this direction that we have values like normal, reverse, alternate, or alternate reverse for them. I'm gonna say normal for now, but we're going to inspect the other values for this in the DevTools. And the last value is fill mode, how the style of an element should be applied before and after the animation plays. Technically, it allows us to apply styles to the element both during the animation and at its starts or at its end points. We have forward, backwards, and we also have both values for them. So let's go ahead inside the browser and see how this animation works. So here we have the button, but there's no animation because the animation has ended. And the reason for that is because the animation times is running only 1 time. So if I reload the page, there you go. You could see that it rotated a couple of times and then quickly stopped. You can see the rotation value is that 1080 degrees here. So this is the CSS property that we have, and we're going to explore this right now. First of all, I'm going to increase the duration to 2 seconds to make it slow. And in order to run this animation, all we have to do is click on this icon that we have at the start of the animation. If you click on that, you can see the button here rotates a couple of times and then stops. So it opens this animation panel at the bottom. So it's a great way to learn and understand about animation. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to give us some space. Then we have the animation CSS here, and we have this animation timeline at the bottom here. So if I click on this replay button, you can see it plays it again. And it takes 2 seconds to run this. And you can see the timeline here. So right now you can see it's linear. Let's go ahead and change the timing to ease in and ease out and replay the animation. It nicely starts and speed ups and then slows down at the end. That's because the ease in and ease out. Let's go ahead and change the times of the animation to 3 times. So you can clearly see the animation waves that we have here. So these are the frequencies of the animation. So it runs 3 times. If I run this again, you can see it run 1 time, 2 times, and then the 3 times. So beautiful. So let's talk about this normal thing that we have here. So if we expand this shorthand by clicking on this icon, we can see the different values that we have for each CSS property that we have provided inside this animation shorthand. So for example, this 2 that we have here, you can see it goes for the animation iteration count, shows the count of the animation. And this normal that we have here is for animation direction. So it shows the direction and it should be normal. Let's go ahead and change this. Let's see other values for normal. So let's go ahead and change this normal to something like reverse. And inside the preview, let's run this animation again. And actually forgot to increase the duration as well. Let's make it 2 seconds. Reload this. Now you can see it rotates to left and basically reversed the animation direction. So previously it was rotating clockwise to the right. So now it's reverse. Now, if I change this linear to something like ease in and ease out, right now we cannot see it here, but if I go back to the code and change it here, let's change it to ease, you can see the chart that we have here is a bit different. And this clearly shows that how the timing function affects the animation. Let's go ahead and talk about this forwards. That is the last property that we have here. And this forwards goes for the fill mode, animation fill mode. And the way it works is about the application of properties based on the start, duration, or end of the animation. And since this is the reverse, the rotate stays at the 0 degrees angle. The reason for that is because this goes reverse, so it goes back to 0. But since the animation fill mode is forward, the rotation property stays at the end of the animation. So if I go back to the code and change the forwards to backwards, so you can see right now it's 0 degrees. If I reload this, it's gone. You can see it doesn't stay there anymore. But if I set this to forward again, it will keep the rotation value at the end of the animation, which is at 0 degree. Now we can play with this. We can actually get back this to normal and keep the rotation at 1080 degrees at the end. This right now has no effect on our animation, but this can be useful when you have other animations or we want to run animations based on different functionalities or from JavaScript. So this property here makes a difference there. And this is a cool way that we learned about the animations and the animation shorthand with the help of VS Code. And we can actually define other keyframes as well. We can add a keyframe for move. And instead of from and to, we can add percentages. For example, at 0%, I want to translate to 100 pixels. Then at 25%, I want to translate to 100 pixel to right and 100 pixels to bottom. Duplicate this. At 50%, let's make the X to 0 pixels. And again, let's, for example, change it to 75%, make this one at 0 again. So something like this. So since I've called this move, I should change the button animation to move. And now you can see how it works. It goes through something like circles. So it starts from here, comes down, goes here. And we can animate the first one as well, because I think I forgot to do that. At start, we can change this one to 25%. This one to 50%, 70%, and 100%, get back to the original place. So reload, you can see it plays like this. Instead of linear, we can change it to ease as well, just like transition, and now it's ease instead of linear. And also for number of animations, we can set it to 3, for example, 1 turn. It goes to second and third one, and then it should stop there. We also have a value. Instead of 3, we can set it to infinite. So this will infinitely run this animation forever and will never stop. So as you can see, it moves around. And I guess that's it all about the CSS animations. And don't forget to check out other stuff that we have here. We talked about the CSS functions, the ease and linear. We talked about the combination. We used the from to for translation. We can combine the values as well. Let's actually do it. When it goes to here, let's change the rotate to 1 turn. So on each step that it goes, let's add a turn. So 3 and then 4. So if we preview this, you can see it has this cool animation for rotation. Yeah, we can combine the values for the keyframe. We talked about the animation. We can actually use this shorthand as well because it's not all needed. And for the triggering animation, we can add it like this that we talked about. All right, so that's it for this video. We talked about a lot of important concepts about animation. We talked about transition, transformation, and CSS animations. So next topic is actually called a grid, and this is a 2-dimensional layout. So see you there.